Welcome to channel. Today, we explore story filled with unexpected twists. Please, subscribe and like to stay updated. Let's begin. I must confess that on that Wednesday morning 2 years ago, I was feeling rather gloomy. My wife, Elaine, and I had an excellent intimate relationship. We were both really interested in one another. We retired at the same time, at the age of 58. She came from the teaching profession, whereas I came from the Portland Transit Police. Maybe we didn't do it every day like rabbits, but we still made time for one another frequently, sometimes twice a day. But that Wednesday morning 2 years later, it seemed like we hadn't seen each other in a long time. My wife felt that my boredom was caused by a lack of activities, which led to despair and, finally, the sensation that I was too weary for intimacy. But I have another theory. I feel my sadness was caused by a lack of closeness, and I believe she is involved. That's the situation I found myself in. If she isn't making love, why doesn't she experience the same desire I do? And, if she makes love, when and how? For example, consider Wednesday. She had arranged a coffee rendezvous with Marcia, an old school buddy, in Portland. But is it really that simple? I followed her, observing as they rejoined and proceeded to her favorite cafe. Everything was the same as the previous 5 weeks. When she returned 90 minutes later, she made a few purchases before returning home, being sure to record each receipt with the correct date, time, and price code. I thoroughly examined every detail. After all, I was a police officer. Here is our Sunday routine. She goes to pottery class, and I go to the pub. During those 5 weeks, I sat at a pub near the community center, watching her constantly come and leave. I even looked out the window to see her make a pot. Now, the final varnished pot sits mockingly on the table in front of me, confirming that she did really manufacture it as she stated. She doesn't have the opportunity to contact anybody else anymore, but I couldn't escape the sensation that something was wrong. Despite the absence of substantial data, I couldn't deny my intuition. Everything finally came into place the following Sunday. It wasn't an abrupt discovery, but rather a gradual one that struck me like a ton of bricks. The towels provided the first indication that anything was awry. Let me clarify. It is traditional in our household to wash the laundry every Friday. That Sunday morning, as I stretched in bed, Elaine emerged from the bathroom with a stack of green towels. "I'm washing them now," I was told. "Could you take the red towels from the closet and put them in both bathrooms?" Every week, she rotated between green and red towels, as per the routine. "Of course," I said, eager to assist. I followed her directions as she headed down to the washing room. After breakfast, I was cleaning the dishes when she phoned to check the washing machine. I opened the door and saw that the towels were still whirling inside. While we were preparing the bed for the next load, I couldn't shake the question that had been bugging me for weeks. If she was cheating, how did she do it while I was busy at work? I couldn't escape the impression that an irritating idea was attempting to enter my awareness. It wasn't until about 1 p.m., when we were drinking coffee, that I was finally able to relax. Sitting on a chaise couch at the rear of the home, I watched the first load of washing hang on the line. As I looked, I observed 4 green bath sheets for green hand towels and 1 white bath sheet at the end, nearly covered by the house's sidewall. The voice in the back of my mind became increasingly forceful, screaming to catch my attention. How did the white towel get it into the laundry? It wasn't in the bathroom's wash basket where I expected to find it. It was not utilized in any of the restrooms, thus there was no need for it to be there. We saved 2 old white bath towels for summer usage when the grandkids play in the inflatable pool outdoors. It was May, and the towels should have been stored in the closet months before. Is it possible that she was having an affair right beneath our roof? Perhaps it was simpler for her to hide her tracks by utilizing towels instead of leaving evidence on the bed linen. It couldn't have been in our own bed since, even though I'm a light sleeper, I'd notice if she was sleeping next to someone. And then it seemed like a ton of bricks had fallen on me again. It is brutally clear that I am not slow because I am depressed. This lady seems to be putting something into my drink. "You seem to be deep in thought, my love," she interjected. "Yes, I have been trying to answer this mystery in my brain for a long time, and it's driving me insane. But now everything is beginning to come together," I said. "That is amazing, sweetie. It's important to keep your mind occupied," she observed dispassionately, returning to her book and finishing her coffee. "My thinking is usually keen," I told her, but I chose not to reveal my doubts. Instead, I put everything together. The suspect, who turned out to be my wife, drugged me before dragging her boyfriend, a stranger, into the home. Now everything is obvious. For months ago, we began a new daily regimen. She started bringing me a glass of whiskey before going to bed at 8 p.m., and around 10 p.m., we both took pills, a light sedative to help her go asleep, and multivitamins for both of us. She said that taking the medication at the last minute would be more effective. I considered thoroughly inspecting my medicines when the occasion arose. But, assuming my assumptions are true, I know how and roughly where this is occurring, but not with whom. Who could she call to get him inside the home at this time? I hope it isn't the irritating, overweight neighbor next door. I may have neglected the right introduction at the beginning, but as the cast of people grows, it becomes fitting to include additional information. My name is Franklin Ward, and I was known as Inspector Ward until retiring 4 years ago. I hoped to be a senior inspector, but an unpleasant occurrence early in my career derailed that goal. When I told one sly criminal that he had been arrested for breaking his girlfriend's wrist, he laughed. Unfortunately, he slid down the steps twice. My career possibilities may have slipped into obscurity, but getting promoted from district police officer to inspector in the Portland Transit Police was a saving grace for the last 7 years of my tenure. It not only helped me retire, but it also gave me a renewed feeling of purpose. I attempt to stay fit. I've been feeling lethargic recently, but if my hunch is true, this will pass quickly. Despite my diminutive stature, I do not consider myself ugly, and I am strongly opposed to dishonesty. My wife, Elaine, is approximately the same height as me and has a slender, toned form. Her gorgeous blue eyes and long black hair round off her stunning appearance. Our neighbors to the right are an elderly couple we seldom see. Julie and the irritating Greg reside on the left. I couldn't help but think he was a jerk, despite my wife's insistence that he was truly a kind guy if you took the time to get to know him better. Maybe she got to know him better than I realized. Julie, on the other hand, shown exceptional resilience. Her first husband died of cancer, and she successfully raised their twins alone until they departed for university. Loneliness struck her hard, and for 3 years, a stranger occupied her life, bed, and finally her home. Greg has lived in her home for 6 years, and they have been married for 4. Julie is most likely about 52 years old, based on my calculations. She is tiny, thin, attractive, and adorable. Her deep voice is captivating, and I could listen to it for hours. If she could sing, she would surely be a blues phenomenon. Greg, on the other hand, is short, athletic, and drives an Audi TT. What a show-off. Despite his kind demeanor, he is really a snarky and self-confident individual. He feels himself cognitively superior to others, yet his arrogance was not lost on me. I have met brighter people than him. His look is as sleek and glossy as just clean dog excrement. Upon contemplation, I discovered that I don't much like him. To be honest, I do not believe he likes me either. I have a compelling hunch concerning who, how, and where, but I lack actual proof. It's extremely simple to examine the pill status. On Sunday evening, my wife attended her pottery lesson as usual. As soon as she departed, I grabbed a pair of gloves from the garage and searched our home. What was I searching for? Everything that should or shouldn't be present. In daily life, we notice things that seem out of place to us. In an inquiry, these features, no matter how insignificant, often lead to a resolution. I started with the tablets, which she delivered me disguised as vitamins. As suspected, these were prescription sedatives. The accompanying booklet stated that they should not be combined with alcohol. I had silently spat them out the night before, and I felt better the following morning. I spent the next 3 hours meticulously inspecting each area, hoping not to leave any hints. She didn't have to know about my amateur performance. Finally, I concluded that there were no evident indicators of illicit activities in the extra bedrooms. The bed linen was clean and seemed to have been freshly pressed. I was certain that the sheets had not been cleaned since they were not used in the bedroom. Still, I discovered something hiding under the sofa at the rear of the home. While rummaging under the pillows, I stumbled upon a piece of foil, a wrapper from a contraceptive I had never used. Now I could see where they were having fun on this sofa, using a towel to catch all the disgusting droplets. Disgusting. I suppose she rinsed the towel and then returned to me. My marriage is breaking apart, and I don't have to talk about it. I could quit the relationship without requiring evidence of her adultery, but that would not make me happy. I have never considered myself vengeful. I can typically forget about little grudges. But in this instance, things were different. It ignited a fire in me, a yearning for complete destruction. Sitting in solitude, Plotting my retribution over the following several days, I couldn't help but observe how unconcerned my wife was with my attitude. I recognized that our relationship couldn't be saved and that only I was aware of the impending divorce. So, every night, I feigned to take my medications and surreptitiously spat them out when Mom looked away. On Monday night, I was awakened by her phone's relentless ringing. I didn't move as I felt her begin to toss and ultimately get out of bed. She crossed the room and exited, leaving me alone in the darkness. I heard the slight sound of the linen closet door opening and shutting on the landing, followed by perfect quiet. Despite my apparent confidence, a wave of nausea overcame me. I could have gone downstairs to catch her cheating, but the notion of seeing it was too much. I could have broken in and interrupted them or ran into them, but it would have been embarrassing for them. But I wanted more than discomfort. I could have barged in and physically challenged them, but they would have portrayed themselves as victims, and I would have ended myself in jail. Don't forget, I used to be a cop. Every day, some hooligan got the chance to attempt to seize me. Knowing my luck, that would not have gone well. To exact true and devastating vengeance, I wanted to make them feel they still had control of the situation. That meant I had to give this annoying guy access to my wife until I was prepared. I keep an extra home alarm remote control kit beneath my bedside table. When Elaine went downstairs to bring in the little troublemaker, she had to disable the security system. I let them a few minutes to settle down, sensing the passion in the air. But then, on impulse, I hit the alarm button. The turmoil within the home was overpowering and shocked me to my core. I can't fathom how that impacted Greg. His intentions for a romantic evening were quickly dashed, and he fled into the rear of the home in search of protection. The alarm rang loudly, and Elaine rushed to the main panel to switch it off. I knew she was unfamiliar with the alarm system's functioning, with the exception of the fundamental operations of arming and deactivating. Despite my efforts to explain this to her throughout the installation, she was perplexed, and I ultimately gave up. I was certain she would claim it was her fault that the alarm went off. When I heard her open and lock the linen closet door before returning to our room, I couldn't help but mock her. "Have you just come in?" I asked playfully, appearing to be surprised. She responded irritably, moaning that she needed to walk downstairs to turn off the alarm. "This is unusual. What may break it? It does not operate when there is no one downstairs. We need to look into it," I responded casually. Elaine yelled, "No, you cannot go in there," and quickly ended the statement. She must have known that, in my changed condition, going down may result in terrible repercussions if the subject was discovered. A tough scenario would have emerged, and she was intelligent enough to comprehend it. I was already downstairs and had switched on the alarm, but there was no one there. I also examined all of the doors and windows, and there was no one. "Sleep well," she attempted to reassure me. I took her advice and slept peacefully. Elaine avoided any suspicious conduct for the rest of the week, and I anxiously read a message on her phone for 10 minutes while she cleaned her face. I helped her set up the lock screen, so even though my fingerprint was not detected, I knew her backup passcode. Their self-esteem was so high that they scheduled midnight dates via text messages. This revelation verified two things. They had pilled me and were in severe jeopardy. By Sunday evening, Elaine and Greg had recovered from the previous night's horrors and agreed to meet at midday on Wednesday. That was great with me. I already had a plan in place that didn't need much preparation, as long as I could consult with Julie ahead of time. This opportunity arose on Monday, when Elaine departed to see Marcia. I observed Greg's automobile was gone near his neighbor's home. I hoped Julie, who normally worked from home, was present. Fortunately, Julie was really at home. "Hi, Franklin," she said happily as she answered the door, but her demeanor instantly altered when she saw the severity on my face. "Did anything happen? You look so serious," Julie inquired, alarmed. I informed her that we needed to speak immediately and that we had very little time. She felt even more concerned and started to wonder what had occurred. My initial suggestion was to meet outside the library at 2:30 to speak longer, and she agreed. I quickly explained the issue to her, including my lethargy, a new pharmaceutical regimen, a shift in sedatives, and adultery. She replied violently, stating she had long suspected Greg but had no idea with whom he was cheating. "You know me too well," Julie said. "Every night, Greg gives me sherry to relax and supplements to boost my immune system. No wonder I'm constantly disoriented." "How angry are you?" I asked. "I just want to deal with these two, but I can't go to jail for hurting them as much as they deserve," I told them. "I completely understand you," Julie remarked. I could just kick his fifth place out, but I want to make him suffer. I have a plan, I stated. If we do everything right, they will suffer, and they'll get the punishment they deserve. Count on me, she said, without understanding the specifics. It doesn't matter if they're in despair and trouble. I'm in business, I said. It was my first time alone with her, and I instantly admired her. She was gorgeous, intelligent, and vengeful. What is not to like? I explained my strategy to her. It was straightforward, didn't need lying, and the authorities would do the majority of the job for us. Okay, she said. Give me till the end of the morning to reflect about everything, and we'll meet later. By the way, if the cops are interested in our previous talk, just tell them it was for a spare printer wire. They'll come into town this afternoon to pick it up. See you later. Great. We said our goodbyes and split. Later, we met again, and I gave her the bought cable. The last one was thrown away by accident. Additional explanations were unneeded. My approach was straightforward and achievable. The key aims were not to provoke suspicion among unfaithful spouses, but rather to keep everything the same while maintaining control. On Wednesday, I decided to tidy my garage. I was becoming more irritated as I saw clues that Elaine was planning for another gathering at our home. I made a deliberate effort to maintain my distance and remain cool. Elaine was busy cleaning the solarium, and I couldn't help but notice a white towel in the linen closet, ready to lay down on a chaise lounge and rest. I opted not to contact Julie in order to preserve a feeling of normalcy. Later that evening, around 10 p.m., Elaine gave me a huge glass of whiskey and tablets. She was looking at me carefully. I feigned to take the tablets, but instead spat out the sedative. As soon as she walked downstairs, I took a statin and a drink of whiskey. I wanted the toxicological findings to match. By 11 p.m., I should have felt drowsy, so I feigned to be weary and said that I couldn't keep my eyes open. Elaine merely told me to go to bed, and I obeyed, trying not to let my guard down and wondering why she felt it was appropriate to act this way with me in front of others. After almost 40 years of living with and having 2 children, treachery becomes completely cruel when she not only cheats, but does so in our home, drugging me with sleeping drugs. About 15 minutes later, I heard her climb into bed and assumed I was already sleeping. She eyed me before heading to the bathroom, which was full with the sounds of a shower and a toothbrush. While she was flushing the toilet, I used the opportunity to take the medication I had hidden away and pretended to be unconscious. At midnight, her phone vibrated on the bedside table. I attempted to snort as if shocked, but then halted and paused my breathing. I listened as she got out of bed, grabbed a towel from the closet, and headed downstairs. She left her phone on the bedside table, just as she had done before. A few minutes later, the phone buzzed again, indicating another text message. Despite the severity of the situation, I could not help but grin. In reality, Julie sent the message, questioning why Greg was pounding on our veranda glass door. She was supposed to be concerned about our well-being, but I didn't answer Elaine's phone call at the time. My phone rang. Julie contacted me just now, but I didn't respond, indicating that I was awake. I moved downstairs quietly, trying not to catch their notice, and halted in the kitchen at the slightly ajar door. Sounds flooded the room, and I was overcome by a sensation of contempt and rage. What have I done to deserve this? If she didn't love me anymore, she could have just gone. But why did she decide to stay with this arrogant jerk? In the dimly lit room, a table lamp cast a gentle light, enabling me to get the rolling pin from the countertop where I had placed it. If the cops find it too handy, I can readily point to a variety of other kitchen objects that may be used as a weapon. Despite my objections, I had to stand and bear her remarks until she performed me one last courtesy as a husband. She shouted, imploring Greg not to stop, and it was just the response I wanted. In a fit of rage, I stormed into the room, yelling and demanding that the unwanted visitor leave my wife alone, telling her that I would defend her, though I doubted it myself. Greg was shaking from terror. I smacked him hard on the head with a rolling pin, causing Greg to stumble. Unfortunately, since I was partly under the effect of sleeping medications, the second blow was more powerful than I anticipated. He fell through the window. I noticed July's expression when she finished the play's last act. When Elaine began screaming, I murmured, "Don't worry, he won't be able to hurt you anymore." I fell on top of them, crushing her against her boyfriend while pretending to be asleep. The drug gradually took effect, and my act of losing consciousness became a reality. Meanwhile, Julie recounted what happened at 9:30 p.m. Greg, as was typical, gave her a large glass of sherry and a vitamin to boost her immune system. She obediently drank both, but shortly after, while Greg was in the bathroom, she had a coughing episode, resulting in vomiting into the sink. She softly told her spouse of her intentions to retire to bed early, then walked upstairs. He later joined her in bed, but quickly got up and departed. When she heard a noise similar to a door shutting, she shouted out to him but got no response. She peeked out the bedroom window, groggy and bewildered, and saw him standing outside at the entrance of our glass veranda. She texted Elaine's phone to see how we were doing, but when Elaine did not respond, she called me. Because I did not respond, she decided to conduct her own investigation. She was taken aback when she followed Greg into our yard and saw all I had seen through the veranda windows. Shocked and enraged by his actions, she continued filming what was going on until I, seemingly inebriated, came into the room and assumed that a stranger had assaulted my wife. In a frenzy of wrath, I kicked Greg in the head, knocking him to the ground. She stopped the video and quickly phoned the emergency number. I asked her to be truthful in all communications and not influence the police investigation. Let the authorities do their jobs. If they do everything correctly, justice will triumph. Almost everything she said turned out to be true. The only lie was that the coughing and vomiting were self-inflicted. A paramedic attempted to call me and jolted me out of my lethargy. Feeling dizzy and fatigued, I understood I needed to do something. But what exactly? "Oh, Elaine, is she all right? Has he injured her?" I murmured. "She is safe." He told me that she was now speaking with the authorities. I slipped back into oblivion. When I opened my eyes, I found I was already in the hospital. I was evaluated by a doctor and a police officer, both dressed appropriately. The doctor ended the stillness by expressing worry about my responses to stimuli. It seemed like I was high on drugs or booze. The doctor asked for permission to draw my blood for analysis, and I agreed. My words were somewhat slurred. "Go ahead, doctor." I mumbled. "I have nothing to hide." After the analysis, I laid down on the bed and went fast asleep. The following morning, I awoke at 8:30 a.m. As I cautiously stood up, I spotted another young uniformed police officer sitting at the entrance. "Are you all right, sir?" he inquired gently. "I think so, but I don't understand why I'm here," I said. "If you don't mind, I'll let my superiors clarify the situation." Soon, a nurse entered the room and observed that I was awake. She graciously offered to get me breakfast. I couldn't help but respect our healthcare system. While she was testing my blood pressure and temperature, I heard a police officer speak gently over a walkie-talkie. He returned to the room and said, "Of course, sir." "Yes, I'll tell him straight immediately." The nurse told me that breakfast would be provided shortly, and the policeman approached my bed. "The boss should arrive in about a half hour." "Are you willing to wait, sir?" he asked. I smiled slightly. "Of course. We both know that if I attempt to flee, you'll be forced to arrest me, which would most certainly ruin both of our mornings. Let's deal with this civilly, okay?" He smiled at my response. "It's a joy to deal with a professional like yourself, sir. It definitely makes everything easier." A startling insight prompted him to thrust his head out the door and shout out to a passing nurse. Returning to his seat, he took a country living magazine from a neighboring table and started browsing through its pages. He caught my eye and said, "What did you tell her?" "I told her that you were about to be arrested and that a cup of tea would be very welcome right now." Indeed, after a time, I was already eating a plate of bread. We analyzed England's dismal performance in the second test in Australia. About an hour later, I found myself in an interview room at the local police station, being held on suspicion of assault with serious bodily injury. The investigator introduced himself and reiterated the severity of the matter, asking whether I was aware of the charges. "This is not a joke. If convicted, you might face a lengthy prison sentence." I confessed that I was well aware of the issue. He requested me to tell him about what happened the night before. I told him a generally accurate version of what happened, including my wife giving me a drink and me taking a couple medications before retiring to bed due to weariness. Something awoke me, and I discovered that my wife was nowhere to be found. When I walked downstairs, I heard what seemed to be a scuffle between two persons. In a panic, I grabbed the closest thing and dashed to the balcony, where I saw a guy assaulting my wife and crying for aid. I don't remember much, but I think I hid in trying to protect her, and I don't remember anything else until the doctor brought me out of unconsciousness. I informed the officer. Concerned, I questioned, "Is my wife okay?" No one is saying anything, but it seems that someone mentioned that she is safe. The investigator gave me a serious look and said, "She is also in custody." When you collapsed on that man, she was underneath you. When the medics released her, she allegedly tried to hit you with the same rolling pin that you used. I was sincerely hurt, and I expressed my disdain honestly. Do you know who this person is? He inquired. I admitted that I didn't know, explaining that the room was poorly lit and that he was standing with his back to me. My thoughts were confused, and I remembered almost nothing. It seems, he said quietly, that you found your wife and her lover, your neighbor, Mr. Greg Porter, at the scene of the crime. I simply gazed at him in bewilderment, avoiding dramatic emotions since I knew that pretending surprise would only make the situation worse. Instead, I just stared at him, trying to make sense of the obvious fact. May I assume you didn't know? He questioned, and I quietly nodded. I noticed her growing detachment, but I thought she didn't even have a chance to cheat. Even when we were apart, I always knew about her whereabouts, I told her. It suddenly occurred to me that possibly my own flaws, rather than her treachery, had estranged her. It turns out, I said, I was arrested for assault causing bodily harm because I mistakenly attacked a man who I assumed had attacked my wife. It turned out that he was actually her lover, who turned out to be my married neighbor. In general, yes. The investigator said, the evidence suggests that's correct. Damn it, I said. I suppose I should ask about his condition. The investigator laughed grimly. He's in a coma now. Apparently, the impact caused a minor but important brain hemorrhage. Although it is not life-threatening, it raises serious concerns, he informed me. I sat in solitude, reflecting on the information I had received. I need to know your medical history, he replied after a brief pause. We will consult with your doctor, but could you tell me what medications you're currently taking? I suggested cholesterol statins and vitamins, which my wife strongly advised me to take. He rose from his seat. You are still under arrest at the moment. I will not press charges while further investigation is underway. I hope you realize the importance of this decision, he told you. We exchanged grins and had a mutual understanding. Then he put on his uniform and prepared to accompany me to the cell. I complied humbly, knowing the importance of their jobs, and stayed calm and content with my existing situation. There was no need to cause extra issues. Given the gravity of the injuries I caused on Greg, the evidence gathering and forensic examination were handled with extraordinary caution. Within a week, it became evident that Julie and I had been intentionally and meticulously drugged for 5 months with prescription drugs intended to relieve my wife's fictitious sleeplessness. A thorough check of the sink siphon in Julie's bathroom found evidence of vomit containing the identical drugs consumed in both homes and kept in packets mislabeled as vitamin supplements. Only Greg and Elaine's fingerprints were discovered on the containers. These lovers inadvertently gave Julie and me the same quantity, and since she is so little, it resulted in early indicators of liver damage. Fortunately, the issue was detected before it became irreparable. Julie's video and the records of our phone calls corroborated the veracity of our claims. After examining my blood samples, it was discovered that I was under the influence of heavy pharmaceuticals at the time of the occurrence, which led the police inquiry in a new route. The investigation of phone records and communications revealed that Elaine and Greg plotted to keep Julie and myself under the effect of medications while continuing their romance. Greg brags about his escapades with my wife in our own house, demonstrating a total lack of regard for me. When I remembered some of my wife's responses, I couldn't help but wish I had taken more extreme action against her. The situation improved when Julie and I gave the police complete access to our homes, certain that we had nothing to conceal. When they investigated our computers for information tying us to the events of the night, it became evident that Greg was up to something sinister, making a significant profit from his investor money and then fleeing to a nation without an extradition treaty. A laptop stashed in one of the rooms yielded a number of curious invoices, including one in my wife's name. They intended to steal all of our money and go, but Greg had a whole separate plan unconnected to Elaine, even though her fortunes, like mine, were jeopardized. I couldn't wait for the authorities to tell her about it. Finally, Elaine and Greg were charged with deliberately injecting a poison into the human body with the purpose to damage or cause discomfort under Section 24 of the Crimes Against the Person Act. If convicted, the maximum jail penalty for conspiracy to defraud would be 5 years. Although Elaine did not work in finance, her text conversations to Greg suggested that she was aware of and participated in the scam. The maximum jail penalty for these offenses is 10 years. Before the trial, Greg was escorted directly from the hospital to the police station. where he and Elaine were being investigated. Elaine was sentenced to 2 years in jail for abuse of office and conspiracy to conduct fraud, which will be served consecutively. Greg was sentenced to 3 years for malicious usage that caused Julie injury and 5 years for fraud. Julie assisted the authorities in recovering all of the money associated with the crimes. During Greg's trial, doctors from the prison service were optimistic that his speech would return to normal before his release, but it remained unclear what he would do for a living after his release. The majority of his property was confiscated by the police under the Proceeds of Crime Act, and even his former friends were hesitant to offer him a job related to money. But the issues did not stop there. The police discovered that we were victims in this circumstance, and no charges were made against me. They stated that I had been drugged by an accomplice of the guy I was accused of attacking. I appealed to my old friends in the national press for assistance. Julie and I opted not to become engaged in the mayhem. We were extremely upset by the betrayal of individuals we had trusted, and we wanted time to reflect on everything. The public's response to the announcement was a combination of excitement and sadness. Elaine and Greg received scathing criticism from all sides, and no one could defend their conduct. Julie's charm and elegance just added to the confusion, since no one could comprehend why Greg chose to leave her for someone else. Our children were in court the whole time, and I had to wait until I finished giving testimony and was freed before sitting with them. I only performed for 20 minutes. The forensic specialists made various observations concerning my blood tests, Julie's liver condition, vitamin containers, text messages, and financial issues. I couldn't see why this naive lady would let Greg coax her into pleading not guilty. Everyone acknowledged their text messages. He believed he had done appropriately, but when the awful reality was revealed in court, my daughter opted to entirely remove her mother from her life. She sent a letter to the jail, notifying her that she was not permitted to contact, write, or see her or the children. If she did, they would pursue a restraining order. My kid had a close relationship with his mother, so when he asked whether I would mind if he visited her in jail to hear her perspective, I told him to go. If you feel it's necessary, son, go ahead. Otherwise, you might regret it, I warned him. I also advised him to limit his expectations. A few weeks after the visit, he contacted me that evening. You hit the nail on the head, Dad, he said me. I feel like I've been let down. I will never regret that I broke off communication with her. Each line seemed to stun him more than the previous one. In her eyes, it was my responsibility for not appreciating her, for losing my vigilance, and for failing to strive for greater success in life. It wasn't her fault this manipulative jerk took advantage of her vulnerability, courting her and forcing her to participate in his schemes. It was his idea to drug Julie and me, steal our savings, and hide them in his offshore account. Then she escalated the deceit. I have a lot to discuss with your father in order to get back to him, she informed the man. Mom, you poisoned him so you could be with a man he despised in his own house while he was unconscious upstairs. Go back upstairs. The next time he sees you, he can shoot you and claim it was self-defense. Her son appeared so taken aback by her behavior that he felt compelled to offer her extra reasons. Do you realize he saw all those shameful messages that you sent to your lover? He was asking. Dad's biggest disappointment right now is that he didn't know about your affair with Greg. If he had known, he probably would have lost his temper and used a rolling pin on you. He took a risk thinking he was defending you from a criminal, while you bullied him with your doubtful buddy. I felt a bit embarrassed, but I soon dismissed it. They did not separate on good terms. In fact, the rules put on her were the same as those imposed on his sister: no contact, no communication, and no visits. She lost the respect of her marriage, children, and grandkids as a result of her scandalous connection with a criminal. In addition, she lost a large chunk of her funds. During the inquiry, I filed for divorce and sold the home, assuring a fair split of property between us. She hired a lawyer to defend her in court, but his case proved useless. I'm suing her for mental anguish caused by her continued aggressive actions. When she is freed, her only source of income will be her pension. At the same time, Julie divorced Greg, and he instantly understood he would not get half of their home. Julie and her previous husband were granted the home in trust for their twins, so she has the right to remain there for the rest of her life. Greg was left with nothing and would have to become homeless. Julie and I had been in the limelight for months, masquerading as innocent victims of an adulterous spouse. When the media attention got too much, I decided to take a 2-week break to a private villa in the south of France. At the same time, Julie stayed with a friend in the same location. After we both suffered betrayal, we developed a deep trust that built over time. We began as friends and later became lovers. I decided to put my part of the earnings from the home sale into savings and live with Julie. My children grew to appreciate her, and my grandkids now have a new grandma. Julie's twins have also developed a good rapport with me. Although we are not married and will most likely never marry, it is an honor for me to call her my life partner. Our relationship is something to be proud of. I am certain that if I fail to pique her interest, she will let me know that it is time to quit our relationship. I am confident that she will not deceive me and that she shares my emotions. Initially, I was upset by the absence of intimacy, but Julie determined to make up for it, since her ex-husband had been denying me of it. The debt was swiftly repaid during our time in France. Julie is a true blessing, and I don't see why anybody would pick someone like Elaine over her. We still take vitamins every night, but now we're taking the appropriate ones. Julie decided to give up alcohol to help her liver recuperate, and I followed suit. I want to spend as much time as possible waking up next to her. Therefore, I strive to care for myself. I've always characterized Julie as attractive, intelligent, and even a touch vengeful, but I can now confidently state that I adore her. I used to laugh about it, but now it's undeniable. Julie can still love after losing her spouse to illness, raising 2 children on her alone, and surviving betrayal. She embraces me with all my shortcomings and loves me completely. She is really an exceptional lady. Thank you for watching this crazy and twisted tale of betrayal, retribution, and surprising new beginnings. What would you have done in Franklin and Julie's shoes? Share your ideas in the comment section below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and press the notification bell for more stories.